Welcome to Connecting to Spirit with Stacey, a weekly journey into the spiritual world with evidential medium Stacey Niedenthal. With nearly 10 years of experience offering transformative private, group, and platform readings, Stacey is also a passionate mentor, guiding students for over 5 years to unlock their intuitive gifts. She is the author of 2 impactful books, My Head Knows, But My Heart Still Hurts, a 30-day grief recovery journal, and My Crystal Addiction Diary, an exploration of crystal and stone energy for healing. So please welcome the host of Connecting to Spirit, Stacey Niedenthal.
Hello and welcome to Connecting to Spirit with Stacey. I'm evidential medium Stacey Niedenthal, and I am your host for tonight's talk. We missed the last 2 weeks with it being the holiday, so I hope you had a great and wonderful holiday and New Year and see all these great and wonderful things that are coming in this year. And speaking about the great and wonderful things that are coming in this year, I have a dear friend of mine that I met a couple years ago, Trisha Taylor, who was going to be our guest tonight. And Trish is a Reiki master and evidential medium, and she has a candle business as well. And she's just a all-around good friend, a great woo-woo person. So, Trisha, I'm so glad that you're here with us tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Stacey, for having me. I am so excited to be here.
Oh, it's great to see you. I know you're in California, so you have a little bit warmer weather than we do here in Pennsylvania. But I thought who better to have on the show than a fellow woo-woo sister, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, since our meeting for a few years ago, this has been a journey for both of us.
Yeah, I was trying to think. Has it been about 5 years since we met?
Oh gosh, I can't remember. 2021, maybe, I'm thinking.
Okay. So, about 3 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Trisha, before we get started, why don't you just kind of give us a little bit about yourself and tell us who you are and where you're located and what you
Yeah.
do and how people can get in touch with you. And
Sounds good. So my name's Trisha Taylor, and you can see on the screen, I'm at Reiki Trisha. I am a Reiki master teacher. I have been involved in Reiki since 2019. And during the process of learning and developing Reiki, I became, we're all psychic from birth, but I'm going to say my psychic blossomed, and it was a great awakening for me, the spiritual awakening I probably had been putting off for many, many years. And so I really delved into the whole psychic medium portion. And when I went to Boston, that's where we met up at an advanced mediumship program. It was a conference weekend with John Holland and Joe Scheel. And it was like glue. We were like magnets together. We just all of us hung out. And there's a group of us, about 4 of us, and we
yeah, I
couldn't
think there
separate.
was there were
Yeah,
maybe 50 people in the class,
right.
but I think
Exactly.
4 of us just kind of
Yeah,
stuck together
exactly.
where we
We
were
migrated
sitting and
together.
having
Yeah,
lunch together and talking a
right,
little bit later about it as well. So,
right.
I know that through Reiki, that's where you kind of got your awakening or your tap on the shoulder. But you and I talked a few days. Well, was it yet? No, Sunday, I guess we talked. And you were telling me that you have had a near death experience. And I
I
was
did.
wondering, do you feel that the near death experience that you had was kind of an opening to this? Or do you feel like maybe that was a little bit of a wake up call? And then, what, like, kind of how did you weave in and out of it?
Well, it was when I was 4 years old. I had a strong pain in my right side of my stomach, lower stomach, and then it was all a blur. So I basically had an appendix burst inside of me, and
Mhm.
so when the appendix bursts, it's very dangerous. It's basically most people, if you don't catch it within a few hours, then something um, definitely could happen to you that's fatal. I was rushed to the hospital and they did not catch it, so it burst. And when it burst,
Oh,
it
no.
poisons all of your insides. Yeah. So
Yes.
now when you're 4, it's not like you remember, key elements that happen in your lifetime, but this was very much, you know, and it was in stone in my brain. And so when I had this experience, I remember um, being held in the doctor's hand, and they put me in a, a tub of ice because my temperature was so high. It was excessively high, and they were trying to bring it down. And I just remember, like, I think I was asking them questions like, "Am I going to die?" And they were saying, "No, you're going to be fine." And I remember coming in and out of consciousness then. And so after that, obviously I survived, and I missed kindergarten. And I remember nurses coming to my home. I had an open wound where they would drain all the poison still, because even after I was okay, I still had to have 2 months of home care. And so it was really, for me, I believe that I when you tap into the other world and tap out of it, you basically are become a part of it. And so I knew that there was a lot of people
Yes.
who had passed away in my lifetime, and I believe that I was always afraid. I never wanted to go to funerals because I felt like there I was going to have to speak to these people who were already in a coffin and or crossed over. And so I think
Right.
that you're absolutely right. It really connected me to the spirit world. Um, but of course, I've had instances ever since then of unexplained people speaking to me, visions and hearing. I don't have. I do. My vision is like yours through a third eye. I don't have the
Mhm.
clear. Like I see a full spectrum of people in my house. It's not like that. It's more a sort of special connection. I don't see.
Right.
Some psychics and mediums are like, I see people clearly. I'm like, I don't see them like that. But I
Right.
have all the other spidey senses, I call it.
Right. Yeah,
So yeah.
I call it spidey senses too. Every once in a while, I'll see somebody pretty clear, and then I'm like, "Ooh, you're new."
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But for the most part, yeah, it's in my third eye. But and when you were telling me about this experience that you had and that you're the fear of going to funerals, and at that young age thinking to yourself, if I go to this funeral, am I going to have to speak to these people that are already crossed over? But didn't you tell me that at one point, I can't remember what you said the woman's name was. It was an aunt.
It was my aunt, yeah, my
You,
great aunt. I lived with my great aunt and my grandmother, and my mom was there too. She was always working, so they basically ran the household. It's a matriarchal family completely, and my grandma ran everything. She still does from the other side. She's the number one key connection, and she's so friendly. And I feel that she's always the gatekeeper. She goes to speak to people before I speak to them, talks to them, and levels them out so that I know what to expect, and then she brings them to very close communication with me. And I feel like she's been a huge part of this. But my aunt passed away. And so when my aunt passed away, I'm pointing over here like where I live, but I was raised across the
that's
street.
okay.
And so, it's so funny. I'm like, oh, my aunt passed away
Oh,
down the street.
yeah. Well, I do
And
that. Like I back here in this yellow room.
exactly. So my aunt passes away, and my mom gives me a call. I lived in another city, and she told me, bring Cameron, who's my son, and he was young at the time. She said, bring him. We haven't called the police yet, and they'll bring the coroner and they'll take her. So she was actually laying on the floor. She had a heart attack in the restroom and fell, and she was still laying there on the floor. So that was my first experience with someone who was passed live that I knew. So
Mhm.
and it was so amazing because she was just beautiful and glowing, but of course there was no physical life. And so when I went to bed that night, I had spent the night with my son and my grandma in this large bed. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night, maybe like 2 in the morning, and I tapped my grandma and I said, Grandma, I just had a dream. And we call her Aunt is Thea in Spanish. And I told her, Thea just woke me up. And she said, I'm okay. Tell Grandma that I'm okay. And I said, okay. And so I woke her up and told her. But the ironic thing is, when my grandmother passed away, my aunt came to me in the hospital with all of our family in the room, and she said, "Go tell grandma that I'm here waiting for her." And I kept hearing it, and it got so loud, and it wasn't because it was loud in the room, it got so loud in my ear and in my head. And she was speaking so loud. I heard no one but her. And she said, go tell her, you need to go tell her. And I finally turned around and said, okay, I'm going to tell her. And everyone was looking at me like, what are you talking? Who are you
Stop
talking
talking
to?
to me.
So I
Oh,
ended up having to go tell her, and then she completely calmed down, and it was amazing. But so, yeah, so I've had a lot of instances like that, but they were so live, they were so real that there's nothing I could do to dismiss this gift that we are given.
right, right. And I often look at it. I used to always call it a gift, and I'm not correcting you at all. I'm just letting you know. I saw this episode on John Holland where he was being interviewed, and someone said, "Well, tell us about this gift." And he says, "No, no, no, I don't have a gift. I have an ability. If I say
Ability.
I
Yeah,
have, it makes it sound like I'm special, but we all
right.
have certain abilities. So this is what my ability is." But I think to myself, yes, I have this ability, but they're so loud sometimes and pushy even
Yeah.
that
Oh, yeah.
I don't really have a choice whether I want to pick this ability up or not. I mean, I know we all have free will, right? Or so they
Right.
say. But just like you were saying, the voice just kept getting louder and louder and louder, like, go tell her, go tell her. All right.
I
Stop push
mean,
it.
it's so true, Stacey. At one time, I was with my niece, and she's not so much a believer. I have two nieces, and one of them is woo woo. The other is very secretive and doesn't want. She's does not want to be a part. And I was in Vegas with her at the pool, and I am in the pool, my niece is reading on the sideline there, and I was with this group of people, and I was like, so you know me, how social I am. Like, how are you guys grouped together? What are you doing here? You just trying to be a little like, where are you from? And they basically said there was a group of six, and three women, three men, three couples, and they said, well, um, we're here together to gather, and then we have to go to our dad's home, and I think it was New Mexico, and we have to clear out his home because he just passed away. So once they said that, it was like this whoosh, and I went, oh no, he's gonna come to me. I know it. I'm on vacation here, people. And so I got out of the pool, and I told my niece, oh no, I know he's going to come, because she overheard everything. And within
Mhm.
a minute he came. And so then I get back in the pool, and I explain, I'm a psychic medium, I have your father here, and only if you are wanting to hear what he has to say, because he is making it very, very difficult for me to think straight. And they said, sure. And they all looked at each other like, this woman is insane. And so I did give the message to them in regards to their father. But that has happened to me a few times in restaurants, and in a plane with two separate people. And I've
Mhm.
given them messages, and you get compelled to, but they're so thankful and so grateful for the messages. But I have also been able to say, how you do. I usually say, no, I'm not accepting any messages right now. I have a
Right,
time frame, but I've been awakened in my sleep at sometimes too. And so I have to say, no,
yeah,
I can't accept a message right now. I need to sleep. And so,
right.
yeah, yeah, they do get very um, boisterous and pushy, but
Pushy.
exactly, yeah. So, I do feel for the soul though, so I want to give that message to the
Yeah,
relatives. Yeah, especially in a time
yeah.
like that, and everything I said was so evidential. I would not have known any of that, and so they
Mhm.
usually, people are so grateful that how would you know any of this? You would not know any of this, and so then after that, I always feel the need to escape. Like, okay, gotta go. Let's leave the pool. Come on,
Right.
let's
I'm
things
the exact same
like
way. I'm the exact same I have to exit stage
yeah,
left. when I do gallery readings and I'm there and I'm talking and then I'm thanking the audience, I'm thanking spirit, and then I want to be gone. I need to be out. I need to it's almost like brushing off their energy before I
Yes,
need to
yes,
take human energy, or I have to come back into my own self, even though I'm still here, but I have
it's
to just
right.
lower the vibration a little bit because it gets too overwhelming
It does.
sometimes.
Does
We were
your
at
body
this.
temperature change too? Because right now I can feel spirit. Like I get like about 10 degrees hotter. I feel like I'm like it almost feels like I'm in the sun just roasting. And then as
Mhm.
soon as they leave, I'm like, "Whew, I'm back to my normal self."
Ooh,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. There's times I'll be doing a reading where all of a sudden it's not really a sweat, but it's like a cold sweat, and I have to put my hair
yes,
up in a ponytail, and
yes,
if I have a jacket on, I'm like, "Oh, I swear I'm not gonna get naked here. I'm just gonna take this jacket off for a minute." But usually when I get that warm during a reading, it's important. And
right,
that's how I always find, somebody's taking something or they're not understanding it, and I get this almost like I feel flush, and I'm like,
right,
"Look, there's something here. Let me go back and find out because I'm sweating for a reason. They
yeah,
want to this home with you, you
yeah,
know?" So it can be a blessing, and it can also be a pain in the butt sometimes when you get woken up in the middle of the night or you have these visitations. Jeff and I mean, we live close to Gettysburg, and we love to go into Gettysburg, but there's times where I'm just like, oh my gosh, leave me alone. And I'll
oh,
even say, I'm closed, no business, no talkie, shh. And I'll out of the corner of my eye, or I'll pick something up and I'll get a chill, and I'm like, "Oh, good grief," you know? But,
yeah, absolutely.
it's and as you and I explain this, I just wanna explain to everybody who's watching, it is so unlike what you see on television, but it is also very similar to what you see on television,
True,
because
very true.
there are mediums that are walking around with camera crew behind them, open, asking for spirit to come through. So they're prepared. When Trisha and I are just out and about, we're not asking for spirit to show up,
No,
but sometimes
not at
they
all.
just do. So have you ever had someone come up to you, especially after you said what you do, and they're like, "Oh, well, what do you see from me?
Oh,
Who's
every
here?"
day. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right, right.
Who's behind me? Can you read me
Yeah,
right now? Absolutely. You just make an appointment.
uh,
We'll do that when we
right?
when I'm not
That
at
I
work or I'm not at the grocery store.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm like, it doesn't really work that way, but if you make an appointment, absolutely,
yeah,
that's what I do. "Oh, well, I
yeah,
see, so and so on TV, and she's at the shoe store or whatever," and yes, because she's open and prepared to read. I'm
right.
just picking tomatoes here, honey.
I'm going through the lettuce and the apples, so yeah, I'm not really ready for all of this. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I totally agree. Sometimes you're just not prepared. I they catch you off guard as they do. The spirit catches you off guard, and but when I do sit down with a client, it is the most wonderful experience, and I always now what we talked about before was like when I'm prepared to spirit will always come through. And people will say, "Well, what if they don't want to come through?" And I said, "Oh, they always want to come through. They want to be near you. They want to give you a message." The thing that's not so timed is that when somebody, just drops in. So sometimes the husband or the wife and or a friend who just passed might just want to pop in when they're asking for somebody else. So sometimes we never know who's going to show up, even though they requested somebody. But I in my readings, I usually ask who you want to call in because I've had instances in the past where people pop in and they don't want to hear from those people, but they're like, okay, I'll go ahead and hear their message. But I like my customers, my clients to call in who they'd like to speak to because it's
mhm,
very sometimes I get, you know, somebody who they really it wasn't even their relative, it was maybe a friend and that just passed. So I usually request them to even think about it ahead of time before you
Yeah.
come, bring something, um, and maybe a picture or a watch. Or and I had a psychometry class, and I just did that this year, and I
Isn't that
wasn't sure.
amazing?
It was so fun, and I wasn't sure if actually I was connected in that form. And everybody brought something, and I let everyone else experience it too, and they wrote down their notes, and then we said it live later, and it was
Mhm.
so fun. And I actually am able to do psychometry. I wasn't sure until this year. And when people brought, brooches and glasses and, whistles, things like that, a blanket, a scarf, I knew I picked up energy that I did not even believe I could. And so it was a
Right.
really exciting type of thing. I wasn't sure if it was really in, one of my abilities,
Yeah,
but apparently
well,
it is.
I feel that spirit gives you what you need when you need it. And for those of
Absolutely.
you who don't know what psychometry is, everything that someone has touched who is no longer with us, it holds energy, it holds a blueprint of them. When I do psychometry, I always like to have a picture of someone that I can see into their eyes. Everybody always says the eyes are a window to the soul. And oh my gosh, how true that is. You can give me a ring. Yes, I can pick some things up. But you give me a picture where I can see their eyes and just gaze into them, then I can pick up more information. But, you know, all mediums are psychics, but not all psychics are mediums, which you know. And
Right,
part of a psychic ability is psychometry because you pick up energy as a psychic. So why wouldn't you have that tool?
right, right,
You
right.
know,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah,
it can be very amazing to, oh my gosh, I didn't know I could do this. Oh my goodness, am I really doing this?
yeah,
Nuh-uh, you're lying. No, but then you get something so, or you're given something. I don't want to say that you get it because it's not like you go to the grocery store and pull it out, but you're given something so clear, so evident. Goes, oh my gosh, for some reason I'm seeing this gentleman in this blue velvet jacket. And the loved one goes, oh my God, he loved that blue velvet jacket. We hated that. Every time he performed, he had to have that navy blue velvet jacket on. Well, for some reason, he's doing this. Yep, when he would talk like this. And he's telling me that this jacket is still around. Oh my God, I still have it. Blue velvet jacket. Like, come on. Where do you get that? You can kind of
right,
look
right.
picture and tell some traits about them. And when we get back from this first break, Trish and I are going to talk a little bit more about, how some mediums work with just picking things up, what's real and what's not, or why we drive home evidential mediumship. But Trisha, hang with me and we'll be
Okay,
back in a few minutes. Okay.
sounds good.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Dr. RC, will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com.
Hi, welcome back to Connecting to Spirit with Stacey, with my guest, Trisha Taylor. We're streaming live on Facebook and YouTube, Spotify, and all the other major streaming platforms. Give us a like, give us a share, help us to create this wonderful site right here at Connecting to Spirit on Bold Brave Media. So, Trish, before the break, we were talking about the word evidential. And I know for myself, it's something I really like to emphasize. When I first started doing readings, I was Stacey Niedenthal's psychic medium. And not that I'm not psychic, because I am, but I like to say Stacey Niedenthal evidential medium. The psychic comes in with it as well. What I found when I say psychic medium, I get all these messages. When am I going to get married? How's my health? When am I going to get a raise? They want these type of readings, which is great and fine, but I'm not a party trick. I want to show you evidence for healing of your loved one who has passed. So I thought we would talk a minute and see what your thought process was about, like, the new buzzword I'm going to say is evidential medium, because it is truly giving evidence, just like I was saying before we left with the blue velvet jacket. But how do you feel about stating it that way?
Um, I, in general, I think when I say I'm a psychic medium, people just lighten up anyway, but most of the times, I know that type of client. That type of client wants relationship. They want to know, when am I getting married? They want to know, am I getting the raise? That type of thing that you brought up. Um,
Mhm.
when I myself do readings, and you and I both use cards, we use angel cards or spiritual cards. Um, I definitely explain to them, and you have to break it down. You have to break it down and say, Spirit is going to bring you the message that you need and not necessarily the message you want to hear. And what happens is when they're hyper focused on, they only want to hear one thing. And I think we talked about this the other day, is when
Mhm.
they're hyper focused, they don't hear all the other wonderful messages that were evidential to begin with. I talked to you about a client that only wanted to hear one thing, which she ended up hearing at almost the last 5 minutes of the hour of her reading. But because her mom came through specifically to give her that message, but the idea that she dismissed everything else that was coming through that was so important, because she was so focused on hearing exactly what she needed to hear, and she did get that. But then she called me or texted me the next day and explained that her daughter heard the reading, and she said, Mom, you missed 80% of that reading because you were not paying attention." And that happens because the client
It
just wants to hear
happens.
one thing. Yeah. And then when she heard that her daughter spoke to every point that I made that was very evidential about bringing up, I think I can slide it in here, about bringing up some specifics about her family, that she dismissed it. And so her daughter was like, "What are you talking about? Grandma lived here. She knew this thing. She knew this point. Everything was valid. She was great." And so I believe when she walked away, she thought, I don't know what she didn't feel that I had given her probably a substantial reading. But when her daughter explained to her that, she apologized to me. She said, I can't even
Oh,
believe that I even doubted what you were saying, but it was my fault. I was so focused on trying to hear one thing. And when you listen to what Spirit is giving you, they are supporting you in ways that are 10 times more appropriate to use and utilize in your life than just the one thing you came for. So a reading can be, when it's evidential, it becomes so much more to you than you needed when you first walked in. So I love the
correct.
evidential portion. I do. I actually, when I'm going to do a reading, I explain, do you want to do more psychic of a reading, or
Yes.
are you coming here for more of a mediumship? This way I can give you a quick psychic reading, pull some cards, and just like I had a reading last night after I had got home from work, and I was like, okay, and she said, I don't want to do any mediumship. She's a regular. She's like, I don't need to talk to anyone. I just want you to help me figure out what's going on with my health and my life. So,
Right.
and that's, I truly believe it. So I cater to whatever the client wants in their reading. And they want evidence too, as far as other things go in psychic and, that are psychic, past, present, future. And so, I hopefully and I ideally is my goal to make sure I hit those points. And
Correct.
listen, people don't have all the skills to do all of it, but if we're, focused on relaying the message the Spirit gives us, then we do give them what they need.
Exactly, exactly. And that's why it's very important to me as an evidential psychic medium, but as this person who's relaying a message from spirit, that I do it in the most loving way and not vague. I mean, we've all had those readings or heard about those readings, Trish, by, just surmising and kind of, looking at guessing about how old you are. I can probably figure out you've probably lost a grandmother or a grandfather, and, and oh, this woman was such a lovely woman and she loves you so much and she wants you to know that you're okay or that she's okay. So there's no evidence there at all. But if I were to say, oh, I've got this grandmother here, and I feel as if she's kneading and baking bread, and I feel like there's flour all over the place. Um, but it feels like this is something that she did entrepreneurially. And you go, oh my God, my grandmother was, she owned a bakery or a cookie shop. That's
Right.
evidence.
Right.
Yes, a lot of grandmas baked. I'm not one of those grandmas, but a lot of grandmas baked. But if you say, "Oh, just donuts and breads," and she just feels like she got flour, and it feels entrepreneurial, like it grew. Oh, she owned a bakery. Okay, it's
Right.
amazing. It's amazing to me sometimes when spirit gives me something that seems so left field, and the person completely understands it. I did a
Yeah.
reading for a woman one time, and I had this young man coming through, and I said, for some reason, he's Batman, and he's taken his mask off, and he's pointing to his eyes. And I don't know what, and I didn't interpret it. This young man was legally blind on the
Oh,
earthly, and he was saying, I can see. And
that's
I
great.
how cool this was. So every time I see Batman, I think of this young man, you
Yeah, that's
know?
awesome.
Spirit's just so cool the way they relay their messages to us that gives us evidence that to us as mediums, we sometimes go, Batman mask?
Right, right. What is
Do
this?
I
Yeah.
say that?
Yeah.
I'm just going to, and there are times I even go, look, I don't know what this means, but I'm just going to tell you what I'm seeing. Hopefully it'll make
Yeah.
sense to you. And I feel like sometimes I have to preface that so that they're not like, this woman's crazy, like Batman mask. But she knew exactly what it was. It took her a second because she thought about it for a second, and I'm like, "Oh God!" And she goes, "Oh, I know what that is." I'm like, oh, "Tell me."
I
It's
love that part. That's the best
those
part.
pieces,
Like,
those
you make it
pieces of
you make it work.
evidence.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
that in our head, we're thinking, this is me.
It makes
And
no sense. Yeah,
it makes
exactly.
no sense. And I know you said a minute ago where um, spirit is always going to show up, and spirit's always going to show up. And if a client says to you, well, what if they don't show up? Sometimes we ourselves, or I do anyway, I think to myself, what if this is the one time
Yeah, exactly. That's
that,
what
like,
I
I'm
think.
like, I
Well,
do my prayer, I do my speech, I explain how I work, and then I say, let me see who I have here. And then no, like, crickets.
crickets.
It's like, I want to tap on my microphone and go, is this thing on? Hello, guys. Who's here?
Yeah,
It's never happened, but it could. I mean, I had a small group a couple years ago, and normally if there's 10 or less clients, every single person gets a reading. And I came to the last woman, and it was so quiet, and I'm like, oh. And I got nervous, like the human side of me
yeah,
started like
yeah,
fluttering.
exactly.
So I just said to her, I just want you to think for a moment, visualize the person in your head of who you want to come through. And all of a sudden I got this male figure coming through that was her father. And she said, no, I don't want to speak to him. And I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
let me push it back. And then someone else did eventually come through. But I had said to her, listen, he's still tapping on my door. I feel as if he just wants to come through and apologize. And he gave a few details of some things that, had it been a private reading, I would have gone into more details about the
Right,
situation she
right.
was in. But in a group reading, I would say something. I'm like, do you understand where I'm going? Because I can whisper it in your ear. I don't feel like this is something that everybody needs. And she was like, I understand.
Good, good, good. Yeah, yeah.
But it's that evidence that, like, sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to go, really?
Yeah. I had situations where, and this was a group reading I did. You and I, we do group readings. I love group readings, and uh, they were all coworkers, and they were best friend coworkers, and it was like a group of 6. And the very first person I read, she her father committed suicide, but I
Mhm.
didn't word it in that way. I basically was like, he's very apologetic about the situation that transpired, and he wants you to know that he's sorry and he put you in this difficult situation. And I was being very kind-hearted about how to explain this. Now, then she came forward and explained to the group herself that
Mhm.
yes, my father did commit suicide. And they
Yeah.
all whipped their necks and were like, "Oh my God, we didn't even know. I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah." And so she
Yeah.
shared it with the group, but it's really it's tender. You don't want
It
to,
can be.
yeah, you don't want to
Yeah.
overstep and be
You don't want to
just
you don't wanna overstep and say those delicate things. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get back. We have to
okay,
take a break here, but
okay,
I don't want to that thought process.
okay.
We'll be
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hi, welcome back to Connecting to Spirit with Stacey. I'm evidential medium Stacey Niedenthal and your connection to spirit during this hour. But I've brought along a guest of mine, a friend of mine, Trisha Taylor, who's also, I think I said Trisha Taylor, who is also a psychic medium, Reiki master teacher, definite woo-woo woman that I met a couple years ago. And if you are just now joining us, you can always watch the replay on YouTube or Bold Brave Media or my Facebook page, Connecting to Spirit with Stacey. But before we went into the break, you brought up suicide. And it's got to be one of the most difficult things to bring through in a reading, and overdoses, for me anyway, especially if it is not a one-on-one.
Right.
But I look at it as the person that's sitting in front of me wants to see and talk to this person. So they're open to it. However, you just never really know how to broach it. I generally say, would you understand this person taking responsibility for the way that they passed? Yes, I would. Okay. Because it is such a delicate subject. You know, they want to know why. And I've had so many of my clients ask me, because of their faith or because of their religion, if my child committed suicide, did they go to hell? And right, right. And I usually just, give them a hug or touch my chest and just say to them, you know what? I only deal in love and light. I only deal with the good guys. They came through.
Yeah.
They're not in the bad place. It may have taken them a while to learn the level they needed to be in because of the situation. But to me, purgatory, no, my love, your
Yeah.
loved one, okay.
Yeah.
You know, but it can be, it can be hard to talk about with somebody, and everybody seems like they want to have the answers. Well, can you tell me why?
Yeah. It's been difficult on certain readings that I've had. I've had the soul basically come right out and say, I didn't want to be there anymore. I just couldn't do it. I've had those
Hmm.
responses. And then I've had a few drug overdoses, suicide, somebody shot themselves, things like that,
Hmm.
and of that nature. And it's difficult to speak about it, but a lot of times there were mental health issues that came first, and then they didn't want to deal with, first of all, mental health, and then drug addiction, and it's all usually goes hand in hand. And it's a
Hmm.
lot of people just, they know if this is the time they were supposed to leave the earth, and that's what they usually say. They like, that was my time, and
Right,
so they committed to that time, and
right.
it's very difficult to share. But there's some, I've had some where the the relationships are completely open about it, and people have where
Hmm.
the soul was like, "Oh, you got a tattoo with my name on it," and she's like, the girl's like, "Oh, here it is," and showed
Yeah,
me the
right.
tattoo. So I'm like, like her they were just so happy to hear from them. They didn't, think
Hmm.
back, 5 years ago when she passed away, they were so excited about speaking to them like she was in
Yes.
the room. And so it was a whole different approach. So sometimes you get the really sad situations, but other times it's like, the girl's like straightforward and like, I saw my tattoo and how's my dog doing? And, what's going on with mom? Things like that. So I
Right.
love when they're so open like that because they're exactly the same person that they were alive.
That Yeah, when they were earthbound. And I
Yeah,
often say to someone who's struggling with someone who has passed this way, I'll just say, just can you just think for a moment? Can you just, open the possibilities of maybe their spirit and their energy was just too good for this earthly plane.
yeah,
They
absolutely.
needed
That's
to be in the spiritual realm. And I see this, like almost like this relief come over them that, oh my gosh, yeah, I can understand that. I can understand that thought process of, you know, they were too good for this earth.
yeah.
But, the selfish part of us says, why'd you leave me?
Why'd you leave me? Right, exactly, yeah. And I love the fact that we get to share and be a part of those messages. And when I'm like wrap up a group reading and or reading, I always, we thank spirit, we thank our angels and
Yes,
guides, our relatives, and we thank them for sharing their family and their loved ones with us. Because I almost feel like I become this is the thing that people don't really talk about as being a medium. You actually become a part of their life and for a brief moment because we become we are conduits. So we become a part of this family unit for a brief,
right.
15, 20 minutes, half an hour, who
Mhm.
knows? And it's so touching that now I feel like, okay, I just was introduced to your mom. Nice to meet you, mom. And it feels like they are, we not only have our spiritual family above, but we have the spiritual family here on earth. And now I feel like I'm so blessed with, all these people doubled because I have the spirit world that I just spoke to, half an hour ago. So I
Right,
just feel that it's so rewarding because we can access those people as well because they are now our supporters and will help us guide through this life with other people.
right.
So I was
Absolutely.
blessed.
And
Yeah,
and and I love kind of ending it on that note that, as mediums, we become that brief moment, that spiritual family with you, and hopefully aid you on to huh, the healing process. So,
right.
Trisha, I want to thank you so much for coming on with me tonight and sharing your story. Is there anything in the next like 30 seconds that you want to leave with the people who are listening? We've got your Instagram there, Reiki Trisha, and you're that same on most of your social medias, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. You can reach me on Facebook. You can reach me at Reiki Healing with Trisha, and then also Instagram and TikTok.
Okay. Well, Trisha, it was such a pleasure just sitting and talking to you. It's almost like chit chatting with a girlfriend, about
Oh
our
yeah,
woo woo. But
yeah.
thank you so much. I hope that
You're
you'll
welcome.
come back on another time, and I'll be talking to you soon. So,
Thank you.
everybody who's listened, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I pray that you each can live the life you love and love the life you live. If not, you're the only one that can change it. But I will see you next Tuesday night. Not sure what I'm going to talk about yet, but I'm sure it'll be interesting. All right, guys. I'll talk to you next week. Bye bye. Thank you, Trisha.
Bye. You're
Bye.
welcome. Thank you.
This has been Connecting to Spirit with Stacey. Tune in each week as Stacey delves into the journey of life, healing, and spiritual connection, inviting listeners to open their hearts, clear their minds, and create the life they love. Right here, Tuesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network, powered by B2.